back to another episode on the Path of Believer. This is season 4, the first episode, and it is with a good friend. His name is Chris
Lorenz.
And he is part of the 180 House, which is a ministry under Youth for Christ. And you've moved to Florida how many years ago now?
Yeah, most people move to Florida. I'm actually from Florida, 5th generation. So my dad, grandma, they all from the East Coast. So I grew up on the East Coast in West Palm Beach, and I've only been over here on the Gulf side for 6 years, since 2014.
Wow. Yeah. So that's been a couple of years of just getting used to the whole Florida vibe, and you've done amazing because the vibe in here is the most beachy surfer vibe ever, and a lot of students that come here, I mean, I've just heard from them they love the vibe here, and it's amazing. But on this podcast, we don't talk about interior designing. We talk about the work of the Lord in people's lives. And how did you get into ministry? How did you get to know the Lord? How did that start out to getting where you are now, which is in this rad, awesome ministry where you get to impact the lives of children who come from all types of walks of life, and started out maybe in places where you started out?
Yeah, so it's kind of a choppy journey, but I feel like I'm still on that path of trying to figure it all out. I'm a super stubborn individual, so I feel like I figured it all out multiple times in my life, and then I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, I had no clue what I was doing. So I'm definitely doing that now, and maybe 5 years or so from now, I'll look back and say the same thing. But my testimony, sort of basic as far as growing up in the church, and my parents were volunteer youth workers at the church that we went to before there was paid youth pastors. And so I grew up just going to church, accepted Jesus when I was super young, and probably recommitted my life to Christ all through middle school. And
did you start out in a certain denomination of a church? Was it non-denominational?
Yeah, it was a Presbyterian church.
Presbyterian. So
yeah.
This is pretty different, or pretty the same of how they do ministry in that type of growing up setting?
Well, the 180 House here is, I would say, different than any ministry any church has done, because our goal here is to really reach students that would never step foot in a church.
Right. So
I feel that what we're doing here is being, I'll say, a part of the body of Christ that just by the label church eliminates a lot of people from even engaging in conversation with people, because they don't want anything to do with it. So we just try to create a space here at the 180 House. Our tagline is "Be here, be you, belong," and it's kind of just trying to create a space that's like the well, where people from all walks of life can meet each other, and ideally we can have a safe place to share our faith.
Wow, that's awesome. So you're growing up in the Presbyterian lifestyle of Christianity, and your journey is...
I feel like that should be another t-shirt. Presbyterian life,
Presbyterian life.
Yeah, no, I don't even really know if I knew what that meant or their doctrine at all. It was being indoctrinated into me, whether I was aware of it or not.
Adopted faith, basically.
Yeah, I'd say that. And so all the way through growing up, this is my parents' faith and religion, and I am part of their house and their family, so this is who I am.
Right.
But I would say one of the biggest, I don't want to say come to Jesus cliche, but moments was post high school, figuring out who I was as a follower of Jesus. Is this something I do because it's what my parents do, or where do I stand on a lot of these things? And so I think I was about 21 years old, around that age, where my cousin and I had been actually digging into our thoughts, our beliefs on our relationship with Jesus, rather than just kind of how we grew up.
How did you, if you can expand upon it, how did you even come to that? At 21 years old, that's being real. Not a lot of youth wants to do that. They don't want to really, they do search themselves, but they don't really want to go into oh, what is Jesus? What, why do I believe the things I believe as much? It's more of YOLO lifestyle, so to say, you know, especially in my generation, the millennial-ish, Gen Z transitional area. That's kind of like the mindset. How did you, or what caused you and your cousin to enter into that headspace?
So I'd say figuring out our worldview, growing up in the church, I learned how to be a super moral person, and I would say it was very pharisaical. I would live a life that was better than somebody else's, and so I could judge and look down upon them because I'm not sinning the way they are. And so in that, we'll say the now YOLO, you do you lifestyle, I had the freedom to sin and live the life I wanted to live, as long as it wasn't as bad as some of my friends or some of the other people. And so I felt that I kept that almost like a moral card in my back pocket where, well, at least I don't do this, or at least I don't do that. And I felt so fake, I'd say, using that and playing that over and over. And I just thought there had to be, I think it was that emptiness that you feel, where there's got to be more than just going through the motions of religion.
Right, right. And so you guys went through this stage at 21. And so you were in college or high school. Oh, well, no, you're out of high school by that.
Super slow. I was still in high school. My mom calls me special. So.
Yeah. So you're in a university, I'm guessing, or college years. How was that like?
Yeah, college years for sure. I definitely didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. So I was doing community college, EMT, fire academy, things like that. Really felt God calling me into that sort of career. And so that's the direction my life was heading. Really focused on, honestly, who my wife was going to be, and like looking hardcore at that age. Like, hey, right. I want to put roots down. I'm looking for a girl, and I'm looking for my career. I was looking for stability. I had kind of been a little bit well-traveled as far as doing what I wanted to do. And most of the time, again, I would check it off a box that it's not bad because it would be a mission trip. But it was always usually about me. And so
where did you go, like, for mission trips, like locally in the States or?
That's a good question. I don't know. So my grandparents were missionaries in Peru.
Right.
That's kind of growing up in the church type thing, or it's been ingrained way, way deep in me. My grandparents were down there for 29 years. And so I'd been back to Peru a few times to see the house my grandfather built and the people and the lives that they've impacted. I had done a super selfish trip to Japan, which weren't there for long. We'd done Costa Rica, we've done Guatemala, we've done Mexico, just different trips in different places. And at that time, 21, maybe a little bit later, was working with the organization called Joshua Expeditions down in the Keys. And we were leading sort of like sea camp, teaching kids about the marine ecology, and then also giving working with the migrant communities down in Homestead as well. So a Christian school could come down and bring like their high school trip to go have a little vacation in the Keys, learn marine ecology, and do a community service project at the same time. So that's really where God was kind of like, hey, maybe there's more to than just firefighter and EMT.
Right.
Maybe this is just an option of what I have for you.
So we've talked about this behind the cameras and stuff, but like you're a teacher, or we're a teacher, in a high school that's local here.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like how you got into teaching, or?
That was like the beginning of the seed being planted, that I had always seen my lifestyle as never being able to work a 9-to-5 job, like behind a desk. And so that's where like, okay, firefighting, 1 day on, 2 days off, helping people. I'm super critical thinker. Like, those are some of the gifts that God has given me, and I think I would be good at it. And so I was really passionate about it. But that's where God was like, maybe that's not what you're supposed to be doing. Maybe that was a means to an end to actually impact teens, because I had a heart for working with young people and helping them not make some of the mistakes that I made growing up.
And so you entered into, got your bachelor's, right? Is that what you need for?
Yeah. So that's a little bit farther ahead. I had the door slammed on me. Well, I'll go back a little bit to the testimony. There's like a lot coming right now. coming from all different angles.
Just take it how you remember it.
So my cousin and I, 21, started, this is going back into my testimony.
Right.
Started with a small group of us breaking bread together, doing communion together, and really digging deeper into what following Jesus really looked like. And kind of, I guess we would call it like deconstructing church and religion and all the stuff that we had been taught, and figuring out why we practice these ways of Jesus. And so I was baptized by my cousin, and that was one of my struggles for a long time. Is baptism? Everything was about salvation. Everything was about, are you going to heaven? And it was a ticket I had to, like, yeah, I got my get out of hell free card. Let's see, do you want to, when you die, like, do you want to go to heaven or hell? Let me think about that one. Yeah, okay, I'll take the, like, even if like I was an atheist, I'm gonna believe in this just in case. But I never looked at following Jesus as a way of life. And so that was the beginning of it, is if I really want to follow him as I'm an apprentice under Jesus, why am I not following in his footsteps? And if he said you should be baptized, like, why am I not doing that? And I'd, up until that point, been like, well, it's not salvational. It's not necessary to do. And I know there's people have all different beliefs on different parts of that, but I think everyone boils down to, it's like, it's one of those things. So I was like, why am I holding out of something I'm not doing? And so why don't I like start giving in? So that was the first part, surrender my life to baptism. And then I felt there's a huge change at that. That was like the tipping point.
So in terms of like baptism, the whole like perception you had up to that moment was, as long as I get baptized, I'm good.
No, it was, I don't need to get baptized.
Oh, you don't need to get baptized.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So I guess that would be some of the Presbyterian doctrine, is it's, you know, you can get, dedicate your child, or they'll call it infant baptism or different things like that.
Okay.
I was never that, but my parents maybe dedicated me to the church, and like there's that whole theology there. But it wasn't about, I'm dying to my old self. Like that wasn't a salvational point. I was never taught that, and I still don't see in the Bible where that is you're not a Christian until you actually enter the water and come out. I believe that it's a symbol of that. And so I was like, I don't need to do a symbolic thing.
Right.
And honestly, it's probably a lot of my proud, arrogant nature that I still struggle with to this day, of pushing back, of I'm just going to not do it just because I have the freedom not to. And I realized that was the first part at that age where God is like, it's not about you. It's about letting go of you for me.
That's good. Yeah. That's something like me personally. I also, like, you know, growing up, when it came to like baptism, always, well, so I had like this set goal. I wanted to get baptized by the time I'm 18, like within that 18-year like period. And I did do it, but a lot of my friends, I remember, they were like very hesitant, and they're like, I don't know if, and it's like very, I guess you could say, kind of in the Christian world, one of those murky things that very often has like those, like, this person says this, and it comes to like a place of almost to some instability, which kind of sounds like what was in your head going on. And your cousin, it sounds like, kind of helped you navigate that. Was he also Presbyterian, or?
Nah, he lived a completely different lifestyle, and
Really?
he was having a whole different path with Jesus of, I can't speak to his family of origin.
Right,
I know
right.
that we both had grandparents who were missionaries. We both had families who were Christian growing up. I'd say he kind of pushed back a lot harder and didn't play like the moral Christian card. He was more like, I don't want any of that because I've seen it maybe. So he was actually, you know, has a completely different testimony than I do. So it's not like we were on the same track together. It's like we were on completely different tracks, but crossing at the same time.
And that's interesting. You know, I've recorded other people's testimonies, and we had this guy, Mark, and the person that got used in his life was, you know, the story in the Bible where it talks about how the Lord used the donkey. It's like, and I'm not calling any of those people like donkeys, but like what I'm saying is like the Lord can use whatever and whoever he wants to get to you. If he wants to say something to you, he'll make it known to you, and he'll use like the most unlikely or unlogical to us people to do the greatest works, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's like almost anybody's testimony, yours and mine, like the things that we do now. Like I personally can say, I never would have thought I would be where I am, like recording a podcast, for example, to share people's testimonies as an example. Would have never thought that, you know, all those little things that I took in high school, like multimedia classes and all that stuff. I'm like, I'm just doing this for a credit, like, you know,
right.
And, but now I'm using all that for the kingdom, for building God's kingdom, expanding it. And, you know, I love this one quote that I think it was my pastor who said it. God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called.
Right.
And that's just like the yes and amen statement for anybody, I think. Like, if you can speak on that, like just to everybody, like,
yeah, it's definitely
who might
my
be
story.
like doubting themselves, you know, and like, you know, I'm not qualified for going into doing XYZ, but like clearly we're testimonies of that.
That's definitely my story for sure. I so post that tipping point of, you know, I'd say actually wanting to follow Jesus as a lifestyle rather than just checking a box. There was a huge gap, and I'll say up until this ministry started, of pharisaical moralism of just being a good. So after that, you know, I met my amazing wife, Ashley, and that's a whole nother story of how we met and everything. But I was living a life for a long time of my identity as a believer was being a good husband and being a good father to our 3 kids that we have now, which are good things, but they aren't the source of it. And I was using that as my identity of it looks really good to my community and my church and my friends if my marriage is good and my kids are obedient, and that's where a lot of it was, which was the opposite of grace. There's no grace at all in that. It's all about
self-righteousness.
Yeah. And so I realized it was going back to sort of those roots of just being a moral person, and not about actually apprenticing to Jesus in those ways. And there's a pastor that I want to say right about when this ministry started that I started listening to and following, John Mark Comer. He has a church called Bridgetown out in Portland, Oregon. And he literally has a website, shameless plug here, but like it's called practicingtheway.org. And it puts in these applicable ways to actually surrender yourself to practice Jesus's ways today. And he had a book that absolutely wrecked my life. It's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And it talks about 4 things that go completely against our culture.
Silent, go.
Yeah,
culture.
like literally, and that's my mentality is be productive. Like it's a good thing to a certain extent, but it is way overused in our culture right now. And it's the rat race. Jesus never called us to the rat race. And Matthew 11, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, I will give you rest. I'm like, please give me some of that. But before I get that, I got to go finish and grind out to finish a podcast or, you know, get the 180 house ready or do whatever I have to do for you. And it was this huge realization later, which I'll say the beginning of this ministry was like my next tipping point was, and I'm still trying to figure this out, God cares more about who I am than what I do. Wow. And I say that to everybody because I still don't believe it myself. I'm still struggling because, yeah, but if I don't do this, then these kids that I know that are struggling here aren't going to get this. And if I don't do that, and yeah, it's just...
It's kind of like this, because I've thought about that myself. It's almost like we get into this mentality like God needs us, but in all realities, he doesn't. A need and a want are 2 different things. He wants us to serve him, but he doesn't need us to serve him, you know? And that's something myself, I totally agree with it. Like, if you don't think you're struggling with it, just stop and analyze your life. You'll realize that you might be going through that. it's like we get into this grind. Like, I mean, I'm a full-time student. I'm doing like 1, 2, 3 ministries, and it's like all that stuff on top of life. And like, you know, I'm the head of house right now because my father passed away, you know, oldest son taking up, and all that stuff just goes on me. And honestly, if I don't rest, I realize I go crazy. Like mentally, like it's just so much fog. And I like just sometimes I'll just blank out, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like my brain is not even catching up. It's like, or not my brain, my body's not. My brain is like a million miles an hour, and it's like, and I love the verse where, you know, I have this put on our Instagram on Beachside. It's like Jesus on the boat sleeping when the storm is happening, and it's just be still.
Yeah.
You know, that verse that says, be still and know that I am God. And that just like stopping, it detoxes us so much. And there's this doctor, her name's Dr. Caroline Leaf, great neuroscientist, and she's Christian herself too. And she talks about how we have like all this mental toxicity that happens when we just have all this stuff that we don't analyze, and we just go. And almost like you're cluttering your brain. And then we're just, oh my goodness, how did I get here?
Yep. Yeah, that's it. So the 4 things in that book that wrecked my life: ruthless elimination of hurry, silence and solitude was the first one, Sabbath was the second one, simplicity was the third, and then slowing was the fourth. And the one that kind of was super, I'll say, religious for me was the Sabbath. I had looked at the Sabbath just like I'd looked at baptism. Baptism is great, but we don't have to be baptized to like have a relationship with God.
Right.
It's a tool that is used that kind of shows a public announcement that Sabbath, we don't have to do Sabbath. That's something that was Old Testament, and Jesus gave us freedom from that.
Right.
And I was rereading this book, and the way our bodies were designed, like literally God rested. Like on the 7th day, God rested. And there's this silly cliche that people say, well, the devil never takes a day off. And I love what John Mark talks about in this book is like, yeah, well, 2 things on that. The devil, you know, loses at the end. And the second thing, he's the devil. We shouldn't be following what he does. We should follow what God does in the way we were designed.
That's so good.
And I thrive on, again, the successes. Am I doing a good job as a father or a husband? And it's like, I always got to be doing more. So to rest is so opposite of our culture. And it's literally looked down upon. When people greet each other, they say, hey, how are you doing? And I'd say the 2 responses that are most common are good, but really busy. Because our culture says if you're busy, then that's good. Or tired. Tired is good. Because if you're tired, that means you're probably pretty busy. But to people who are joyful and say, you know, are actually there with that. And I'm not saying to be fake, but to actually live a life that is well rested and connected to the Father is so foreign. And if that could be something that the body of Christ is doing, is amazing. And there's an analogy that I thought of that I struggled with, the doing for God rather than being with him. I was trying to picture him again as a father figure and wanting to spend time with me. So I have 3 kids, love them to death. And I just imagine they grow up, they're 10, 8, and 6. They grow up, they go off to college. Let's say they're gone for 4 years, they're doing abroad. I haven't seen them in forever. They come home and I'm at the front door. I've grilled their favorite thing. They're of age. Maybe I got their favorite adult beverage waiting, and we're going to celebrate together. You know, we're going to pop a bottle of wine, whatever. We're going to have a good time together. And I'm ready to celebrate with them. I haven't seen them in forever. And I open the front door and I put my arms out, and they dip under my arms and say, "What's up, Pops?" And they go grab the lawnmower and start mowing the yard for me. That's not what I want. I want to be with them. And I feel like that's the way that my relationship was with God. It's when I go to spend time with God, it's never pleasing for him. It's, God, I got to check a few boxes for you. So I'm going to do ministry here and do this here for you. And he's like, you're completely missing it. Come get lost in the woods. For me, get out in the water, go paddle, go like be with me.
It reminds me of the story Mary and Martha, you know,
100%.
You know, it's just like, just come and rest. Like, it's good what you're doing, but like, she got it right.
Yeah.
And that's just, wow, that's beautiful. So you're going through all this, and it's just like, I'm listening to this and I'm just getting like waves of glory of like revelations here, and it's just amazing. So you're going through this, you got married, you got your bachelor's degree, you're teaching now, right?
Yeah, so I'll speed up to that. So before I was married, I was still on the EMT firefighter track, and I just really felt God was calling me to do that. And then on my days off, my time off, I was going to be able to do youth ministry on the side, because that's what I kind of felt like in the bottom of my heart was supposed to be doing. And after we got married, it was very clear God was like, I think I need you to get into teaching. Your ministry is going to be, you're going to be a missionary, but it's going to be in public schools, and the government's going to pay for it. I'm like, cool, because I'm way too proud to go ask for money, because I'm not going to do that. So I'll go be a teacher, which is humble and it's noble and everything. The one thing that was really hard was my wife had to work full time to put me back in school as we were having a child. Oh. So someone who struggles with pride, that was really hard for me to let my wife do that. To two, go back to college and finish at 28, you know what I mean? To get my bachelor's, and then also in a career that is dominated by females.
Right.
So it was like, okay, so what was really happening is God was working with my pride this whole time.
Wow.
And I never, again, realized it then. I thought it was just, I'm just taking my lickings and going for it. But after, my wife's just so graciously worked, I kind of did the daddy daycare for our first son, finished, got my bachelor's, and I taught for about a year and a half or 2 years over in West Palm. And then here was the next thing of the pride that God was working on. I love surfing. And I don't know if you know this, but the Gulf Coast, the waves suck over here. And the waves on the East Coast, they're not great, but they're much better. And spearfishing, my family's there. I love it. Geography, it's big city, much more multicultural. Like, it's my style. And it's home still to this day. It's home. And I knew it was hard for my wife to be over there because her family's over here. And I had, out of my pride and whatever, honestly, probably super manipulative, said this is where we're supposed to be. And finally God pried, just like he pried firefighting and all the other stuff out of my hand. It was the East Coast out of your hand. You're supposed to come over here. So I put my head down and taking my lickings again. All right, we'll go across the state. We'll go be with your family. Leave all my family, leave all that. Give up surfing pretty much because there's nothing over here. And sorry, I'm getting like choked up even thinking about it.
You're fine, bro. You're fine. Take your time.
It wasn't good. Like, I didn't like it. And I still, honestly, to this day, it's great over here. It's better over there. So anybody can fight me on that.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, dude, I've
it's
seen
home. Yeah.
I've seen like the waves and everything there, and I still to this day have it on my bucket list to go there. And I have a friend who lives there, and I'm like trying to make it potentially this year.
You can stay with my folks over there. So, anyways, we moved over, and again, part of God's plan. I ended up teaching at Sarasota High School for the first year, and the way God has weaved so many intricate stories that I can't even get into all of them here. Built some relationships with people at Sarasota High School, and I started like a little bit of a skate ministry, a skate club, because there's Payne Park up there. I was like, if I can't surf, I'll skate, and we'll skate with a few kids. So I did that, and I'd heard about this guy that started a skate ministry called 180 Skate. His name's Tim Stork, a phenomenal dude, and never really met him, but I knew of him from up there. We live in Nokomis, ended up getting a job at Venice High School and taught there for about 3 years. And through that time, on the last year teaching, a guy named Caleb Bell that was friends with my wife, his wife and my wife were friends, introduced me to a guy named Parker Thurman. And Caleb had been approached by Parker because Parker wanted to start like a surf ministry. And Caleb's like, dude, I know a guy. And he's from the East Coast. He loves it. He's passionate about it. And he would be really great. Parker worked for Youth for Christ and was trying to start that, but also get adult mentors. And what Youth for Christ does is reach kids where they're at. And usually it's in high schools to give them, the gospel. And so Parker, Caleb, and I met. We dreamt about what a surf ministry would look like. We honestly thought it was going to look like serving pancakes down at the jetty and doing pop-up coffee and just hanging out and loving on that community. But when we researched, is anybody else doing this? Tim, who has had the skate ministry, he actually started volunteering with Youth for Christ. And so he was doing skate ministry and already with Youth for Christ there. And there's a place, amazing place called Ride Nature, the House of Ride Nature in Fort Myers. And they do international missions through board sports and the arts. So we said, okay, well, Tim's got this going. Ride Nature's down in Fort Myers, and they actually have a house. It's a coffee shop, skate shop. And
I've seen that.
Yeah,
I've seen it online.
it's super rad. They're actually looking for interns, I think, still for this summer, but super great people. So we said we want to do that, but we have to do it under Youth for Christ, which is 11 to 19-year-olds, and I'm a teacher at the high school, so we'll kind of do it through teens. And 2 weeks later, Caleb found this place, and Youth for Christ said, yeah, we'll let you guys rent it for a year. We have enough money to invest into it for a year. And it was just like, Hail Mary, just see if it works. In that year, I think we had like a couple hundred kids that had come through the 180 house, and through hardly any leaders. And so it grew way faster than we thought. And so I had complained, I guess, too much about how this place needed somebody to run it. It needed more like, it was a huge, it still is a liability, but it was a huge liability.
I mean, teens, kids.
Yeah, we've got a half pipe mini ramp and a rock wall and all kinds of stuff. We actually sponsor bad ideas here, but so yeah, I went to Youth for Christ, and they knew it too. God was doing big things here, and they asked if I would go full time and run it, and I was like, "There's no way." And this is again part of my story. I don't know if it's my testimony, but it's how God has pushed us. My wife has her master's in social work, so she was supposed to be going back to work to get a job as a therapist, making 3 times what I would make teaching, and I was going to do homeschool our kids, and that was the plan. Well, God had been wrecking her of like, Chris isn't supposed to stop teaching. He's not supposed to stop working with kids, and she never shared that with me. And eventually, when I came and said, hey, I know this isn't going to happen because I'm not supposed to do this. You're supposed to go full time, but this is what has been offered. And then like she broke down in tears, and she's like, God's been telling me this is what we're supposed to do.
Like dreams, or like just
really speaking through the Spirit to her.
Wow.
I don't know if you're into the...
No, I am.
Well, we talked about the Enneagram earlier, and so she's an Enneagram 4, so she's very in touch with her feelings and her emotions.
Right.
As an Enneagram 8, I don't know what emotions are. I'm learning, but yeah, I just press them all the way down, but she's really in touch with that. So that's the way the Spirit speaks to her a lot.
Right.
And he also had put some people in both of our lives that God had spoken to and kind of said, I don't know what this means, but Chris isn't supposed to leave working with kids. And that's when that happened. So
that's awesome.
I left teaching, and it was really, really hard decision because it was in the summer. And I knew that if I kept my job open to come back, I wouldn't have tried to fundraise and build funds to actually be a missionary here, because I would have that to fall back on. And so I think it's like Cortez, when he conquered Mexico, he burned his ship, so there was no retreat. So that's what I had to do, because I knew the type of person I was. And I said, let's get after it and see what God can do. Everybody said it's going to take about 9 months to 12 months to build support. And I said, well, we've got 2.5 this summer. We'll see what happens. Wow. And God came through, and our family was fully funded by the end of summer. And yeah, Youth for Christ took us on, and we've been doing this ever since. So now my wife, super, super gracious woman that homeschools 3 kids, which if anybody knows that, everybody's had to homeschool after COVID.
I mean, I don't do it all the time, but my sister, when it first hit,
it's tough.
It's not easy, man. And especially like everybody, well, right now with the COVID, like everybody needs the computer in a sense, and it's like hogging the computer time.
Yeah. So Ashley Lorenz is a saint, and yeah, she's my rock.
Dude, that is, wow, just crazy. So you got this awesome place. What in this whole like journey would you say were some of your like biggest successes and some of the downfalls that happened, and how did you get over those? You know, like there's in life those just like roller coaster moments. How did you happen to like get back up? Because that's like life, it's up and down. It's not a smooth sailing, you know.
So it's still there, I feel. since starting this ministry, I told you I've been digging into that unhurried lifestyle and really trying to apprentice better to Jesus, Sabbathing more, slowing. A lot of it from my like journey into self-awareness about like my personality type. Talked about like Enneagram 8 or whatever Myers-Briggs you use to find out more about yourself. I have a lot of fears with control, and I have issues with control. And so I've seen that the downfalls are always when I believe, I even use this quote, it's an illusion of control. So people say, I need to give up control. No, you need to give up the illusion. You never even had control, but you need to give up the illusion of control. And that's every major part of my life, giving up firefighting. That was me trying to control. Giving up the East Coast was me trying to control, or the illusion of it. And so from what I've seen is when things get really hard and difficult for me, I have to go inward, and it sucks because I hate going to that spot. I'm not a feeler, but really go to have a better, more wholesome, holistic approach to it. What am I holding on to that God's trying to get me to let go of? And this morning I was on a phone call when you showed up here. Yeah. We've reproduced this 180 house to 2 other 180 houses.
Right.
They're not being run the way this one is run. It's freaking me out. This one's not even being run the way I want it to be run. It's all about, for me, it's like systems and programs that we need to put in place to make it all work. And again, God's just whispering, I don't need you. We've got an alpha, it's not a Bible study, it's an opportunity on Monday nights for our students to come and explore their faith. So I'm like, all right, cool. So once they do that, I can build a program of like a guy's Bible study they can get into after that. So I had this all set up. If you want to learn more about who Jesus is, go to Alpha. And then if you want to go a little bit deeper, you can go to this and then get plugged into a church. And this is whole pipeline that we're trying to build. There's people showing up to the Bible study that aren't followers of Jesus. That's okay. We're reading Matthew together. And if they want to do that, awesome. And there's kids coming to Alpha that, are already in the Word, and they just want to do this. This is the group of people. And God just keeps telling me, reminding me in these roller coaster moments, the down times are always when you're trying to grab onto something. And when you let go, you realize you're not going down. It's that idea that's going down. If we're really going to pray for thy kingdom come, then let go of our will.
That's good. Well, guys, this was Chris Lorenz. He's an awesome man of God, as you guys can see. He's been through a lot. And if you could just tell others who, been going through something in life like you with, just letting go and of like pride and all that, what would you say be one of the biggest tips you could give them?
On how to give up pride?
Or deal with it, just kind of every day die to self. And
so for me, it's hold out your hand and think of everything that you actually have control over, even down to the next breath you take, and realize that how, I hate to say it, but I don't say how insignificant we are, but we really, control is an illusion. And so when we put ourselves in this place of the two gods that we serve are in this culture is accomplishment and accumulation. If you think about every single day, it's I need to accomplish this podcast, open the 180 house, get this to continue this upward projection, or accumulating more things. And if we can get rid of that thought, we're not slaves to anything that's going to control us, and we can be more open to what God's calling us to do. I'm very guilty because I got a death grip on a bunch of stuff that I'm not even aware of. So pray for me in that.
You heard it here first, guys. Thank you for sharing. And guys, check out the 180 House. They're a great ministry. If you're young, what's the age group usually?
Typically high school. So we're located half a mile from Venice High School. So most of the time we have kids that come over after school Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, 2:30 to 5. We do some other programs as well. Sarasota has a 180 House right behind the Chipotle, and we have one up in Bradenton off 30th Street up there. So
awesome.
Look for more of them popping up.
Yeah. All right, guys. See you next time. Bye.